What happens when a superpower threatens its closest allies with economic warfare over an island that isn't for sale? The answer is unfolding in Brussels right now, and it's not what Washington expected. Breaking tonight, the Transatlantic alliance just hit its most dangerous moment since World War II. Trump didn't negotiate, he demanded. Europe didn't comply, they unified. Tensions are erupting across the Western world tonight. America proposed taking control of Greenland through tariff threats, but instead of diplomatic discussion, Washington issued ultimatums. Instead of European capitulation, Brussels called an emergency summit. Everyone believed Trump's tariff threats would force Europe to negotiate over Greenland. Financial analysts expected European leaders to cave within days. Political commentators assumed the alliance would fracture under economic pressure. NATO observers predicted quiet backroom deals to defuse the crisis. They were all catastrophically wrong. Brussels, Monday morning. Standing before the press, an EU spokesperson made an announcement that sent shockwaves through diplomatic channels worldwide. European Union leaders will convene Thursday for an emergency summit following President Trump's threats to impose tariffs on multiple member states over Greenland. Translation: Europe just told Washington that territorial sovereignty is non-negotiable, alliance or no alliance. And what happened next? The continent that built the modern international order reveals exactly why economic coercion against democracies backfires, while American credibility collapses in real time. Dear viewers, between Trump's inauguration and this Monday, something extraordinary happened in transatlantic relationships. Washington pushed too hard, Brussels said no, and Europe, diplomatic, patient Europe, became the bloc that every global partner started watching as the model for resisting bullying. This isn't just about one failed land grab attempt. This is about the fundamental collapse of gunboat diplomacy in the 21st century and the rise of principled sovereignty as the new currency of international respect. London, Monday afternoon. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer stood at an emergency press conference, his message clear and direct. He would use the full strength of government to stop the American decision. He'd already told Trump privately the previous day that he was wrong on Greenland. Think about that timeline. Sunday, private conversation. Trump won't budge. Monday, public press conference. Starmer goes on record. That's not diplomatic protocol. That's crisis management. Starmer acknowledged the decades of security and prosperity the U.S. alliance provided Britain. But he also drew a line. This crisis, he said, could and should be resolved through calm discussion. When asked if Trump genuinely considered military action over Greenland, Starmer's response was telling, "I don't, actually." Translation: Britain believes Washington is bluffing, but they're preparing for the worst anyway. The specifics of Trump's threat are stunning in their aggression. 10% tariffs on 8 European countries starting February 1st. Those tariffs escalate to 25% by June the 1st. The justification? These nations sent small military contingents to Greenland last week, but here's what makes this whole situation absurd. A 1951 agreement between the United States and Denmark already gives Washington the right to move freely and construct military bases in Greenland. Denmark and Greenland just need notification. Trump already has what he claims to want. He's threatening allies over permissions he already possesses. Starmer told Trump on Sunday those European forces were clearly there to assess and work on risk from the Russians. Defensive collaboration, standard NATO procedure, nothing unusual. Washington's response, tariff threats anyway. Now let's talk about Norway, because what happened there reveals something deeply concerning about decision-making in the current White House. Trump sent a letter to Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre. The contents are remarkable. Trump wrote that because Norway didn't give him the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, he no longer feels obligated to think purely of peace. Read that again. The President of the United States is linking trade policy to personal recognition for a prize he didn't win. Støre had written a brief message opposing tariffs over Greenland. Trump's response turned into a grievance about the Nobel Committee. Støre patiently explained, as he had repeatedly before, that Norway's government has no control over the independent Nobel Committee. Trump ignored that reality entirely. The timeline here is important. The deadline for Nobel Peace Prize nominees was January 31st, 2025. That's less than 2 weeks into Trump's second term. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado won the 2024 prize. She gave Trump her gold medal during a White House meeting last week. The Norwegian Nobel Committee clarified the prize cannot be transferred, shared, or revoked. Trump's letter to Norway went further. He questioned Danish sovereignty over Greenland entirely. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China, and why do they have a right of ownership anyway, Trump wrote. There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. Translation: Trump is arguing conquest-era discovery rights in 2026. Then came the kicker. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Complete and total control. Not partnership, not collaboration, not enhanced security cooperation. Total control of another nation's territory. That's the language of imperialism, not alliance management. Now let's examine why Greenland matters strategically, because the resources involved are significant. Climate change is melting Arctic ice, opening shorter trade routes to Asia. That same melting makes it easier to extract and transport untapped critical mineral deposits. Greenland sits on rare earth elements, uranium, zinc, lead, and potentially massive oil and gas reserves. Whoever controls Greenland controls access to resources that will define 21st century technology and energy markets. But here's what Trump's approach misses entirely. Denmark and Greenland were already cooperating with the United States on Arctic security. The 1951 agreement gave Washington everything it needed for military presence. European allies were already coordinating on Russian Arctic expansion. Trump had partners ready to work with him. Instead, he demanded submission. Moscow's response to all this has been predictably opportunistic. When asked Monday about Trump's claims of Russian threats to Greenland, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said there's been a lot of disturbing information lately, but refused to comment on alleged Russian designs on Greenland. Russia's foreign ministry went further last week, calling it unacceptable for the West to keep claiming that Russia and China were a threat to Greenland. In Beijing, foreign ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun urged the U.S. to stop using the so-called threat from China as a pretext to pursue its own selfish interests. Translation: America's adversaries are watching this transatlantic crisis and taking notes on how to exploit the fractures. White House officials aren't backing down. They're adding fuel to the fire. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent-Apio eared on NBC's Meet the Press Sunday with a message for Europe. Europeans project weakness. U.S. project strength. Think about that framing. Respecting sovereignty equals weakness. Threatening allies equals strength. Bessent continued, I believe that the Europeans will understand that this is best for Greenland, best for Europe, and best for the United States. The paternalism is breathtaking. Europe doesn't understand what's best for Europe. Washington will explain it to them through tariff threats. Even within Trump's own Republican Party, concerns are mounting. Senator Mitch McConnell warned last week that attempting to seize Greenland would shatter the trust of allies and be a disastrous foreign policy decision that would tarnish Trump's legacy. McConnell, remember, is not a Trump critic. He's a conservative institutionalist who spent Trump's first term defending him. When McConnell sounds alarms about foreign policy, Republicans pay attention. But congressional options to check presidential power on tariffs are limited. Trump can impose them through executive authority. Overriding that requires supermajorities Republicans don't have the unity to deliver. The 8 countries facing tariff threats are Norway, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Britain. Every single one is a NATO ally. Every single one is a democracy. Every single one has been a reliable American partner for decades. And here's where the story gets really interesting. Even Europe's far-right nationalist parties, the political movements most aligned with Trump's worldview, are breaking with Washington over Greenland. Jordan Bardella, president of Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party in France, posted on social media that the EU should suspend last year's tariff deal with the United States. He called Trump's threats commercial blackmail. When French nationalists are defending European unity against American pressure, you know the political calculation has shifted dramatically. Germany's far-right alternative for Deutschland Party, typically sympathetic to Trump, also criticized the Greenland threats. These parties built their brands on opposing Brussels. Now they're defending European sovereignty against Washington. That's the unintended consequence of overreach. You unite your opposition. The pattern emerging across European capitals is identical. Initial shock, then consultation, then unified resistance. The emergency summit, Thursday in Brussels, will formalize what's already happening informally, European coordination against American economic coercion. This isn't about Greenland anymore. It's about whether democratic allies will accept ultimatums from Washington on any issue. Europe's answer, increasingly clear, is no. The question facing American policymakers isn't whether Europe will cave. It's whether Washington understands the long-term damage being done to alliances that took 70 years to build. Tariffs go into effect February 1st unless Trump backs down. That's 11 days away. The emergency summit happens Thursday. That's 3 days to craft a unified European response. What we're witnessing isn't just a diplomatic crisis. It's a stress test of the entire Western alliance structure. And right now, the country applying the stress is the one that built that structure in the first place. The alliance with Europe provided America with security and prosperity for 8 decades. It helped win the Cold War. It stabilized global trade. It created the international order that made American dominance possible. Now, Washington is threatening to destroy it over an island that was already cooperating on security, over resources that were already accessible through partnership, over threats that were already being jointly managed. Europe didn't want this fight. Brussels would have preferred continued cooperation. But when forced to choose between sovereignty and submission, democracies choose sovereignty. Every single time. The world is watching Brussels this Thursday, watching to see if Europe stands firm or folds, watching to see if American threats work on democratic allies the same way they work on adversaries. And based on the signals coming from European capitals tonight, Washington is about to learn a lesson it should have already known. You can't bully your friends into compliance and expect them to remain friends. The Transatlantic alliance isn't dying because Europe wants it to end. It's fracturing because Washington is taking a sledgehammer to the foundations while demanding everyone call it construction. Thursday's summit will tell us whether those foundations can be repaired, or whether Trump's Greenland gambit just accomplished what 70 years of Soviet pressure never could, breaking the Western alliance from within,